GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that brings clarity like wiping fog off your bathroom mirror. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton, and today we're joined by Ryan Rasmussen, head of research at Bitwise, one of the leading crypto funds. They went from 1 billion assets under management at the beginning of the year to over 10 billion assets under management today. They're basically the filter between crypto and Wall Street. Now, this episode is a follow-up from yesterday's episode where we had Matt Hogan, the CIO of Bitwise, on the show. And Bitwise put out their 2025 predictions, their full 2025 predictions, after we had Matt recorded with Matt. And so we asked Ryan to come on to give you guys even more predictions from them because these are so great. We're going to talk about Coinbase. We're going to talk about crypto IPOs. We're going to talk about stable coins. We're talking about how many countries will own Bitcoin by the end of 2025. And you guys got to stick around to the end because my absolute favorite prediction is that it's not actually about 2025. It's further down the road. And it is when Bitwise thinks Bitcoin will hit $1 million. That's right. You heard that right. Bitcoin at $1 million. It's not in this cycle though, guys. So hold your horses, but stick around to find out when that is. Before we jump in, we need to take a moment to hear from our sponsors who make this show possible. Meanwhile is the world's first licensed and regulated life insurance company built for the Bitcoin economy. They do everything in BTC. You pay in BTC, they pay claims to your family in BTC. You take out policy loans entirely in BTC when you need liquidity. Protect your family from life's uncertainty and a broken financial system. Build intergenerational Bitcoin wealth while the cost of living skyrockets in dollar terms. Plus, get all the tax and legal benefits of life insurance now in Bitcoin. Visit milkroad.com/meanwhile to join the waitlist and get early access to the world's first Bitcoin life insurance. Ryan, welcome to the Milk Road Show.
Jay, great to be here. Excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, man, you too. Really excited. Okay, we went through some predictions with Matt yesterday, so we're not going to go double up and do the predictions he did yesterday. That was 6 predictions. Today, I think we have 7 predictions plus maybe our bonus at the end. But let's start with you guys have a big prediction for Coinbase, which we're very bullish on. I realize this isn't buying tokens, but we've talked a lot about the investing in Coinbase as a great opportunity. What do you guys predict for Coinbase in 2025?
Yeah, I'm super excited about all these predictions, but the Coinbase prediction is probably one of the ones I'm most excited about. We predict in 2025 that Coinbase, not only will their stock double and top $700 per share, but that they will surpass Charles Schwab as the most valuable brokerage in the world.
Wow. Well, can you put that into context for us, those of us listening who are more crypto native than TradFi or Wall Street native? What does that mean what would that signal to TradFi and to the market if Coinbase became the biggest value brokerage in the world?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's really important to think about Coinbase in that context. Charles Schwab is this behemoth in the financial world for brokerage services, right? So many people have their retail accounts. So many professional investors trade and clear through Schwab. And so it really is this behemoth in the traditional finance world. And I think what it would do if Coinbase surpassed Charles Schwab in value would really make Wall Street take notice of Coinbase as a legitimate business that they should be paying attention to and should no longer be ignoring. For years now, Wall Street has drastically misunderstood Coinbase's business model. It's actually more than a brokerage in our opinion. So maybe this comparison is a little bit funky in that way. But if you think about the value of a financial services company, and it's exactly why we think that Coinbase won't just stop at flipping Charles Schwab, that it'll grow even larger than that. These businesses generate tons of money through trading fees. That's predominantly how Charles Schwab makes its money, is kind of through transaction revenue. But as we know, Coinbase is so much bigger than that. They make tons of money through staking and custody services. Their stablecoin business is booming. It generates multiple hundreds of millions of revenue every year. And we expect that to grow significantly. And Base, the layer 2 scaling solution that Coinbase launched last year, is now in a strong leadership position amongst the layer 2 scaling solutions for Ethereum. That's generating tens of millions of revenue for Coinbase today, will likely be hundreds of millions next year. So I think this flipping moment that we're talking about, where Coinbase flips Schwab, is kind of an awakening moment for Wall Street to start paying attention to and start respecting Coinbase as a business in the financial services and technology space.
Yeah, completely. My coins prediction for 2025 is 1,000. So I'm slightly more bullish than you, but we'll look back a year from now and we'll see who got closer. It'll be somewhere. I think 700 to 1,000 is, I mean, look, that's more than double where it is right now. I think Coinbase could be one of the best performing stocks of the next year. I just feel like it is lined up and it is still very undervalued in my mind. And it's also, you make a great point about Circle, their stablecoin business, which they have an investment in Circle. That kind of leads us into your next prediction here. What's your next prediction?
Yeah, so our next prediction here is around crypto unicorns. So we believe that 2025 will be the year of the crypto IPO. We think at least 5 crypto unicorns will go public in the US. Of course, a unicorn is a private company valued at more than $1 billion. And as you mentioned, Circle is probably our prime candidate. That's also probably the easiest layup for us when we came to this prediction, right? They've spoken about going public. There's reports they're positioning to go public. But there's other ones on this list of 5 that we came up with. And it's worth noting that 5's the floor in my mind. I think it probably will be closer to 10 crypto unicorns going public in 2025.
Wow. And I guess, I would love to know which ones you think, but is this a result of, you think the regulation is finally ready for these companies to IPO?
Yes, that's a large reason. The other large reason is that the macro setup is very favorable to crypto companies, or more broadly, kind of companies going public next year. You know, Coinbase really slid into this publicly traded behemoth right before the gates shut towards crypto companies in last cycle. They went public in 2021, and then we saw the regulatory hammer coming down on crypto. We saw the appetite from traditional investors and capital markets for crypto also kind of really slow down after Coinbase went public. As you know, 2021 led into the 2022 bear market. And so, I think the regulatory environment for sure is going to be a big reason why we see these companies going public next year, but that the macro environment, with more investors looking for allocations into high growth areas, with interest rate cuts on the horizon, with more stimulus coming in, publicly traded companies or privately held companies that are looking to go public, have a pretty strong setup going into next year.
Can you share which 5 you think are going to IPO next year, or any
Yeah.
way you can share this?
Happy to share these. It's worth noting that when we do these predictions, we gather the minds across Bitwise, and everyone kind of throws things at the board, and we have a lot of debate on which predictions we think will likely come true and we're most excited about. And this number of companies going public, the number, as I mentioned before, around 5, was probably the lower end of what many of us expect. But the 5 that we selected here are the ones that we think are most likely to go public and kind of span the entire crypto industry. We didn't want to focus on one particular sector. So the 5 companies, just to run through the list real quick, are Circle, right, which is the issuer of USDC, one of the largest stable coins. Figure, which is largely known for leveraging blockchain technology to provide lending services like mortgage lending, personal loans. They also getting into the tokenization space. So I think that they're likely to go public. They've kind of been exploring an IPO since 2023. So again, there's signs that will happen next year. Kraken, of course, very, very well-known US-based crypto exchange. They also have custody staking services. They have a similar business model to Coinbase, though not quite so prolific across the entire crypto industry. But wouldn't be surprised if Kraken goes public. They previously had explored it in 2021, but as I mentioned, Coinbase kind of front ran the opportunity, or was the first one to be able to get in there, and Kraken decided to delay their IPO because of market conditions back then. So we think in 2025, Kraken will likely go public. The remaining 2 are more service providers in a way. So Anchorage Digital, which provides infrastructure services for digital assets. You can think custody and other types of asset management solutions. They're also a federally chartered bank. And so I think, that's one of the unique elements that Anchorage has in its business model. But, they're a prime target to go public. We're partners of Anchorage in a number of ways, and we really enjoy working with them. Think they're a top tier provider. And then Chainalysis, which is, a bit different than these other companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the most interesting one you mentioned so far to me. Okay. Tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, Chainalysis, is a super interesting business model. They really started as a blockchain analytics company, and they still do tons of analytics, but they've moved into this kind of compliance and intelligence services realm. They work a lot with governments and with corporations around that sector. So I kind of think of Chainalysis as more of a SaaS play, while the other ones that we spoke about are more of an infrastructure play. And of course, we all know that SaaS companies, they grow fast, they love to go public, and they tend to do very well in the first few years being public. So Chainalysis is one I'm super excited about, and I think it'll be great to have a compliance and intelligence firm publicly traded in the US. I think that will help, put a button on those concerns that crypto is just this crazy unregulated world. Here's a company that's publicly traded, that's regulated by the SEC, that lives within the bounds of US regulations, whose clients and customers are publicly traded crypto companies, privately held crypto companies, the governments all around the world. And I think that will really help provide a tailwind to the entire industry in the way that Wall Street views crypto as this largely, unregulated black box. I think all these companies going public will help that, but Chainalysis will be a really interesting one to see.
Yeah, I think our audience being investors, the thing they're always wondering, they're looking for the alpha. They're looking for the opportunity to invest. And the interesting thing about this prediction is, to me, but I'll let you give your thoughts as well. This is less about, hey, if these IPOs happen, that you should necessarily invest in them. Investing in IPOs when they first go is kind of a coin flip, right? Like no one here can get in. Nobody listening to the show is going to be able to get into this IPO pre-IPO as part of it, right? Like we're all retail investors. We're buying post-IPO. And I mean, I can say myself, I was so hyped on Coinbase. I bought Coinbase the day it IPO'd and it went down immediately. So I paid for that one. Yeah. Just break it down. For me, this is less about, hey, go invest in these IPOs right away. Watch them as an investor. Maybe there is some opportunities, but this is more of an indication of the greater impact on Wall Street and the attention. And just more IPOs means Wall Street can't avoid crypto and they have to learn about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I like you, bought the Coinbase IPO kind of on day one, and I'm still, averaging down, but still trying to recoup some of those big buys back then. But no, I think that's exactly right. Like, Wall Street largely ignores the crypto industry. Of course, this year with the Bitcoin ETFs, that's happening less and less, but still, in the broad scheme of things, most asset management firms, most Wall Street banks, a lot of the firms that we speak to, they spend a tiny fraction of their time, if any of their time, thinking about crypto. But what happens when you have this publicly traded, this sector of publicly traded companies that's growing at the rate we expect crypto companies to grow over the next year or two, is that these firms, these asset managers, these research firms, they have to start hiring analysts to specifically cover the crypto industry. And that creates this flywheel effect of them putting out sell side, buy side research. That's more mainstream media. More investors start to pay attention to it and take it serious. And so I think that's really, really important. The other factor of crypto companies going public that's really important, more to the crypto industry specifically, rather than, I guess, the Wall Street side of things, is that it allows capital to cycle back into early stage venture backed startups. A lot of these companies here on this list, Circle, Figure, Kraken, Anchorage, and Chainalysis, the venture capital firms that invested in the various rounds that funded these companies over the past 4, 5, 6+ years, are going to be able to recoup some of those investments, obviously at huge multiples. And then what do? They take that capital and they go reinvest it in early stage crypto companies that are searching capital. And those then grow, and the industry as a whole grows larger.
That's a really great point. Yeah, really, more capital begets more capital, more liquidity begets more liquidity, right? Like, real flywheel there. Okay, let's go to your next prediction, which I think 2 months ago, nobody had this on their prediction list. And now in the last month, this has become a hot topic. Go ahead.
Yes, this is one that I'm super excited about. And I want to say I spearheaded this one at the Bitwise team. So I want to take credit for getting this one into the final report. But what we think is that tokens launched by AI agents will spearhead a memecoin mania even bigger than 2024's memecoin mania. I'm really excited about this one. To me, the intersection of AI and crypto is one of the most fascinating areas of the crypto industry right now. I think you're exactly right that 2 months ago, this was not on a lot of people's radar, and certainly wasn't a prediction that anyone would be willing to make. But today, it's the forefront of the meta around what's happening in the crypto space. Like, you have everything from AI agents launching tokens to these AI projects where you're trying to convince an AI to send you stable coins, or like to launch a token when it's been coded not to. It's just this like really interesting intersection to me of two disruptive technologies that find a way to create more value and I guess, be innovative in ways that no one could think of on their own. So I'm super excited about this one, and where this could head in 2025. And I think we're already starting to see this excitement and attention to this sector of the industry accelerate so far in the past few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Curious if when you made this prediction, if you looked at any numbers, the numbers that I'm seeing right now. Cookie.fun is a great site to look at. Not all the AI agents, but I think they list about 300 on there, and they think that the AI agent total market cap's about 10 billion right now.
Mm.
Some other people I've talked to think it's a little bit higher than that because not every AI agent is indexed yet, and so it might be more like 15, 20. Then you look at meme coins. Meme coins, I think, is like 130, 140 billion total market cap. Did you look at any numbers? How did you think about what this could be in the next year?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to frame this up. I think that meme coins are people searching for some kind of really interesting cultural narrative. And like, I'm guilty of spending tons of time on pump.fun and chasing the latest meme and cultural related narrative. And I just think that this will really grasp people, not only within the crypto industry, but it's impossible for mainstream media not to start covering these things as they grow. So I think those numbers are really fascinating. It wouldn't surprise me to see AI generated meme coins or AI kind of specific meme coins surpass the value of the traditional meme coins. I think we think that will happen in 2025. And we're already seeing capital rotate away from some other meme coins into this area. I think that's why meme coins on Base have gotten particularly ramped up over the past month or two, instead of it all just happening on Solana. But yeah, Virtuals, Clanker, like all of these projects are just so exciting. And one element of it that fascinates me so much, and why I'm so excited about this for what it means for the long-term trajectory of crypto, is that this wasn't possible 2, 3, or 4 years ago. Not only was AI not in a place where it needed to be for this to happen, but the blockchain ecosystem really wasn't there from a tech stack perspective. But if you zoom out and think about where we're at today, where we weren't in the last cycle, is that we now have layer twos that have very low cost, high throughput transactions and viability. You have mobile wallet infrastructure that makes it super easy to go from interacting with these tokens on social media to then going and trading them in and out of your wallet using stable coins, using L2s. You have this element of decentralized social with Farcaster that wasn't there a couple of years ago, where people are exploring these meme coins. I just think that you start to layer these different technology stacks that are underpin a lot of this crypto innovation, and to me that's the most exciting. Like, you have Super Anon or Anon Cast, which also embeds this ZK technology into this meta, and I just think the technology stack is a signal of where this industry is headed from an innovation perspective, and how we have kind of these, I would call them social Legos that are starting to be put together, and it's not just money Legos now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The other thing that I can just say from my seat in media is, it's every day, every week, there's a new narrative or a new meta that is catching some attention in the space, but it's very rare that one sticks and filters. For us at Milk Road, we don't produce content around most of these like flash in the pan narratives, right? We actually work really hard at identifying the ones that we think are going to matter long term. And AI agents is the first new narrative that's come along in a while. Probably the first one in, like, I would say maybe even the first one in 2024, because meme coins was really the one that was catching all of the attention in 2024. It's the first one that not only we're producing content around it, we have multiple guests reaching out who want to come on the show to talk about it. We have sponsors. We have sponsors that, like, AI agents that want to sponsor us, want to sponsor Milk Road. Like, and that's just the start.
Wow.
Like, we're just it's really wild to sit in my seat and see that. And when that starts to happen, my spidey sense starts to go off and say, okay, there's something way bigger here than most people. And it's still so early.
That's
okay,
incredible.
Isn't that wild? Yeah. I want to go to your next prediction. Before you give your next prediction, Matt gave your guys' Bitcoin price prediction in yesterday's show, but can you just repeat the Bitcoin price prediction? Because it kind of goes along with this prediction.
Yeah, of course. So we believe Bitcoin will trade above 200K in 2025.
Okay. And what's the next prediction here? I love this prediction, by the way.
Yeah. So to your point, right, there's a number of reasons we think that Bitcoin will trade above 200,000 in 2025. But one of the key catalysts or tailwinds that we see driving the price higher is that we believe the number of countries holding Bitcoin will double in 2025 from 9, which is the number of countries holding Bitcoin today, to 18 or probably higher.
Let's dive into this a little bit because I am so hype on. I don't know what term you guys are using internally. I've really caught on to Matt Huang from Paradigm and his title of calling it the sovereign cycle. I don't know if like sovereign means enough to. I don't know if we should call it like the government holding cycle or the country cycle or like what you call this, but it feels like this. I mean, even just today as we record this, we're recording this about 10 days before this episode actually comes out, but as we record this today, Thailand has said that they are thinking about making Bitcoin legal tender or putting it on the National Reserve. Argentina, same thing. We know that Brazil has a bill that is currently being discussed in legislation. So, and let's be clear, most of the countries, the 9 countries that currently hold Bitcoin, it's most of them got it from seizing it from criminal activity, not because they went out and they bought it. So do you think that we're going to see countries buying Bitcoin as part of their national reserve? Do you more so think that this, like, how do you break down what you think happens when more countries start to hold Bitcoin?
Yeah, Jay, that's a really important distinction to make here because one might look at the visual that we put together, and I actually love the visual in this report. I spent a lot of time with our marketing team trying to get them to visualize this in a world map view. But I think that it's a very important point that you make, right? Historically, the 9 countries holding Bitcoin, which span from the US to China to Ukraine, El Salvador, Finland, the UK, these countries have acquired this Bitcoin for the most part, with the exception of El Salvador and Ukraine, through asset seizures, right? Through law enforcement actions where they've seized the Bitcoin and they just haven't sold it all. Of course, there was more countries like Germany, for example, that had also seized Bitcoin, but ultimately sold those assets off. So right now, 9 countries hold Bitcoin. Again, majority of that was through asset seizures. But we think that what's going to happen in 2025 is that we're actually going to see the number of countries, holding Bitcoin double through purchasing Bitcoin, not through asset seizures. So we believe countries are going to go out and start buying Bitcoin. You named a number of those, and it feels like every single day we're continuing to see more and more countries or more headlines hit where countries are considering, at a minimum considering, but in some cases proposing, creating a national or strategic reserve of Bitcoin. So it's really, really interesting to me that it's happening. We're kind of calling it the Bitcoin arms race, or the space race of Bitcoin. And the reason that we're calling it that is because there's this game theory that we believe will play out similar to the space race, where no country wants to be last, right? They don't even necessarily want to be second or third. And I think it's exactly why you're seeing countries like Poland, like Russia, like Thailand talk about a strategic Bitcoin reserve, ideally ahead of Donald Trump taking office, because if he indeed does declare a strategic Bitcoin reserve in January or shortly thereafter, the US will be the first, right? And I think that will kick off this Bitcoin arms race in a way that will not only fuel the market higher, but will make headlines all around the world about how big of a deal this really is.
Yeah, I like Bitcoin's arms race better than sovereign cycle. Thanks for giving me a better tagline for this, because
Yeah.
it's just, it's the meme. Once America does it, everyone has to do it. And it's so true. And as you said, I mean, I think that one thing that people have a difficult time understanding is like the difference between countries holding Bitcoin versus buying Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And already, I guess here's my question. What do you think America and what do you think Trump does in 2025? Because there's a lot of people who really expect this national reserve thing to happen. And I'm not so convinced that act like goes through legislation and becomes,
Right.
and the central bank is now like essentially buying Bitcoin. Like there's a lot of steps in there versus Trump saying we're not going to sell the Bitcoin that we have and going on record and saying that. There's a big difference there. What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you. There's a difference there. There's kind of tiers to how this could play out that are really, really important. So I think, worst case scenario for this narrative is that not only the worst case scenario for this narrative is that the US sells the Bitcoin after Trump takes office, right? That kind of completely debunks this entire narrative and this entire theory that we're going to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be, tier zero, or even taking steps backwards on this front. I think the next tier up is just declaring a strategic Bitcoin reserve and taking the assets that we currently hold today and just moving those into that strategic reserve category, but not buying additional Bitcoin. For what it's worth, I think even if we declare a strategic Bitcoin reserve, I think that kicks off this arms race at an accelerated pace of other countries going and building their own reserve, many of whom don't own Bitcoin yet, so we'll have to go out and acquire it. But I think that's kind of the tier one that's probably baked into the market today. As you mentioned, we've been expecting this since Trump announced it back at the Bitcoin conference in May or June or whatever that was. So I think that one's largely baked in. But of course, the highest tier, in my opinion, here of what could happen and what would ultimately drive the markets higher above that 200,000 mark would be if the US was going out and acquiring more Bitcoin in 2025. Maybe that's possible. I'm not sure if it is. I mean, these governments move very, very slow. Of course, the biggest organization in the world is the U.S. government. And for anyone who's worked in a large organization, that they move very, very slow. For one anecdote, I guess, is that we work with the Satoshi Action Fund sometimes to go speak with governments or state governments around considering allocating to Bitcoin. And in some instances, they have to pass a bill that just then forces them to study the impact of Bitcoin as a reserve asset in their treasury. And that takes like lobbying to just pass the bill to even study it, right? And then comes the next stage of, then having a bill to actually allocate to it. And what does that mean? So I do think that organizations move slowly. I think the game theory of this Bitcoin arms race could accelerate that significantly. We all know, Donald Trump has a strong personality and definitely doesn't like being second at anything. So I think if Russia or another major country announces they're building a Bitcoin reserve, we could see the pace of this discussion.
That's a good point. That's actually a good point. Like his ego could play a big factor here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I hadn't considered that. Because to me, he would have to expend a lot of political capital to basically take the further step here, as you said, where America is going to actively start buying Bitcoin, whether it's a Cynthia Loomis's proposal of 200,000 Bitcoin a year or whatever form it takes. It just, to me, it feels like I just don't know that that's the thing he's going to really take his political capital to do. But if another major country does it first, then yeah, you're right. It's the arms race. The game theory is it's so prevalent here, and the space race is a great example. Gunpowder is another great example. Like you can't afford to not. If enough countries are doing this, you have no choice. You have to jump in as well. Okay, I want to go to your next prediction, which I find hilarious because part of this prediction came true today as we record this. So go ahead. You're almost ahead of the game here with this prediction.
Yeah, this one is really interesting. So this prediction here is Coinbase will enter the S&P 500 and MicroStrategy will enter the NASDAQ 100, adding crypto exposure to nearly every U.S. investor's portfolio. Happy that this is already coming true. We're not even into 2025 here, and we can tick some of the boxes here for our 2025 predictions. As you mentioned, right, MicroStrategy will now be entering the NASDAQ 100 at this year-end reconstitution in December. And that's really important for a number of factors, but I love this prediction.
Yeah. So give us, because this is a prediction that is actually very conservative in my mind. I mean, part of this already happened. So I think this is like, this isn't going to be one that we need to check in on like our Coinbase stock prediction. That'll be more interesting. This one feels pretty likely it's going to check, but talk to us about what's the impact of this.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The impact of this is perhaps more important than getting the prediction right and kind of ticking that box. So this matters for a number of reasons. So the S&P 500, right, is an equities index that nearly every U.S. investor has exposure to, either in their 401k or their brokerage account. It's a basket of the 500 most valuable assets or companies in the U.S. and it gets reconstituted, or the constituents change every December. So that reconstitution is coming up this December. The NASDAQ 100 is the same, but it's 100 companies and has a few other criteria besides the S&P 500. Now, both of these get reconstituted on an annual basis. Both of these are major parts of nearly every investor's portfolio. It's not just retail investors who allocate to the funds tracking these indexes in their 401ks or Roth IRAs or even in their brokerage accounts, but so many professional investors, wealth managers, RIAs, financial advisors, CIOs of pension funds and endowments. So many of these investors that control trillions of dollars in capital allocate to these different funds or indexes in their portfolios. And that's extremely meaningful for two reasons. One, it's a massive amount of money. And when you have an asset added to one of these indexes, that means that you have to go out and buy the stock of those companies. To put that into context, there's 10 trillion with a T, of capital indexed directly against the S&P 500. So that's $10 trillion that invest in funds that track the assets inside the S&P 500 index. That's just assets indexed directly. It doesn't even count the 6 trillion of assets that's benchmarked against the S&P 500, meaning that they track their performance relative to the S&P 500, and they generally don't want to miss, assets that are in the S&P 500 because they could then underperform. So 10 trillion of assets directly indexed against the S&P 500. If you put Coinbase, for example, if you look at where Coinbase would fall within the 500 constituents of the S&P 500, of that 10 trillion, 15 billion of capital would have to be used to buy coin stock, right? To go make a purchase of Coinbase stock. Now, that's a massive amount of capital because Coinbase today is like a $75 billion company, right? So you're talking 15 billion of buying pressure on a 75 billion asset. And that's just the initial allocation into the stock, right? It's really mind-blowing.
That's really mind-blowing. I pulled up your visual that you guys had from your report.
Great.
So if you guys are listening on YouTube, you can see that. I love that you broke it down this way to show how much money would actually flow into coin as a result of this. So wait a second. Let me just understand. If Coinbase enters the S&P 500 in 2025, I don't know if you have a month when you think it's going to happen, but if it does happen in 2025, it doesn't get reconstituted until the end of the year. Is that, am I hearing that correct?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I think it will enter in 2024 in the December 2024.
Oh, you think it'll happen now? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very end of the month. And then every quarter, the index is rebalanced, which just means you kind of shuffle the weights of existing constituents, but only on an annual basis, really, are new assets entering and assets exiting the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. It's not something I think that most people actually are aware of, because you hear rebalancing quarterly and you think, oh, they're moving assets in and out. But there's this distinction that I know way too much about, having working in the crypto indexing business, between reconstituting, which means adding and exiting assets, and then rebalancing, which just means kind of reshuffling the weights to what they were targeted at.
Okay, so it has to hit it in 2024, like in the next 2 weeks of the year, in order for it to be included at all in 2025.
Yeah, there's like this special circumstances where like the index committee could use this, extreme circumstances to enter it, but I don't see it happening for Coinbase. That's more for like companies that go public mid-year and they don't want to wait till the end of the year for it to enter the index. So what happens here, right, is you index all of the companies that would qualify based on all these different eligibility requirements, and then you take the top 500 by market cap. Some of these eligibility requirements are liquidity and profitability and things like that. We believe and expect Coinbase will pass all of these different screens, and then we'll be in the top 500 assets when you kind of look at the universe of assets there. And then it will enter in December. And then we believe it'll be there at least until the next reconstitution in 2025. But if our estimates for how large Coinbase continues to grow are accurate, right, we expect it to be in there for a long time.
Yeah, once it's in there, it's definitely not leaving. Yeah, that's the real nice prediction, not one that I've seen others talk about enough, and one that just is going to create so much buying pressure. And I mean, here's what it really comes down to for me is I don't know how many Americans currently own crypto. The last estimate of like global ownership was, I think, around like 500 to 600 million people own crypto. But let's assume that the average American does not own crypto currently. But the average American very, very likely owns the S&P 500. And so now they start to own crypto. And even just that mental shift of them being like, oh, yeah, I do own some of this now is It's it's like getting a little bit of a taste of something. It's like the gateway drug,
Yeah, exactly. And it de-risks or kind of removes that negative bias they have towards investing in crypto when they eventually find out actually they already are investing in crypto. And guess what? Your portfolio didn't blow up like everyone said it would if you touched crypto. So I think that's really important. The other really key element of this is that more capital flows into these funds every single week. If you think about people investing money in their 401k fund, or I know many people that just buy, a share or two or three of the S&P 500 every month out of their paycheck. That's capital that continues to flow into these products and is very, very sticky, right? It's not short-term capital that flows into these funds. So that's just continued buying pressure into the future, and what I would call more permanent capital than your traditional retail investors kind of just buying and selling, or hedge funds trading in and out of assets. So I think that's really important. I would just touch on one other thing around this prediction as it relates to MicroStrategy, is that MicroStrategy, we believe, will enter, or now we know, I guess, will enter the NASDAQ 100 going into 2025. The reason why we decided to focus on Coinbase for this graphic is because the NASDAQ 100 is much smaller when it comes to funds tracking that index than the S&P 500. So you will have this similar impact of a portion of the capital tracking the NASDAQ 100 flowing into MicroStrategy, creating buy pressure. Of course, that should have a positive catalyst to the stock. It just won't be nearly as large as the 10 trillion or more assets that track the S&P 500, 15 billion of which will be used to buy Coinbase stock.
Yeah, bullish Coinbase stock, that's for sure. Okay, I'm going to skip your next two predictions because we're getting late on time here. But if you want to know what Bitwise thinks about stablecoins and real world assets, we'll put a link to their full report. And also, if you want to know details, these guys wrote an incredible report breaking down all these predictions today. But I want to go to your bonus prediction because this one is just all of our listeners are going to be psyched about this one. So tell us your bonus prediction.
Yeah, this one we love. I'm happy that you like it. We believe that in 2029, Bitcoin will overtake the $18 trillion gold market, and that Bitcoin will trade above $1 million.
Let's go. Okay, why 2029?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Seems kind of like a random point in time. For the most part, when the crypto industry does these kind of predictions, we look forward 1 year. We have a tendency to do that with predictions. And when Matt and I were discussing what we were going to do for our 2025 predictions, we thought, what if we gazed further downfield and thought about where the market's heading on a longer term basis? And one of the things we kept talking about was, when will Bitcoin hit $1 million? When will it overtake gold, right, at an $18 trillion value, which is the most valuable asset in the world, gold? And then at that point, would it become 1 million per Bitcoin? Now, we think this is going to happen in 2029 for a number of reasons. Historically, crypto has moved in these 4-year cycles where you have 3 really strong years followed by a year of pullback. And there's been different catalysts for each cycle. The first cycle, which really started in 2011, was kind of the Bitcoin cycle, right? Is when you could first access Bitcoin on any kind of exchange, even though it was very difficult. You had 3 really strong years followed by a year of a 58% drop. Then in 2015, you kind of had Ethereum and the ICO cycle, 2016, 2017, massive years of gains. And then again, a 75% pullback in 2018. Thank you, for pulling up this graphic, because this captures kind of our view on how the market's moved historically. Then you had the next cycle, which we call the early application cycle, 3 strong years followed by a year of pullback. So historically, the crypto market more broadly has followed this 3 up years, 1 year of reset, since 2011. And we do think this trend will continue. This also syncs up with some kind of like capital cycle and economic cycle flows, interest rate cycles, things like that. But more broadly speaking, right, we expect Bitcoin to continue to move up over this next year. There likely will be a pullback in the market, whether that's a leverage driven blown out that kind of pulls us down a bit and people exit the market, whatever it may be, whether it's a change in the macro cycle that people aren't anticipating, like a recession or some global conflict that happens. But we think there'll be some kind of reset that happens between now and 2029 for about 9 months to a year. And then after that, we expect the Bitcoin market just to grow significantly larger. If you think about, like I said, the size of the gold market, the largest asset in the world, is an $18 trillion market. But you could only expect Bitcoin to hit $1 million and to surpass that or hit that if you think that's the only addressable market for Bitcoin. And I know us at Bitwise believe that Bitcoin is chasing an addressable market far larger than just gold. It's not just the gold market. It's remittances and sovereign wealth funds and currencies. It's all these different markets that Bitcoin is penetrating. So we expect that to happen kind of in this next cycle to I guess, bookend the 4-year cycle thing, right? We think that the third year of this 3-year cycle, which is generally the strongest, will happen again in 2029. So we expect Bitcoin to hit 1 million then. I would just say, we spoke earlier about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, if the US does announce that it's actually buying 1 million Bitcoin for a strategic reserve, we believe we can get to 1 million per Bitcoin a lot faster than 2029.
A lot faster. Yeah. That's the, I think that is the like black swan event, or white swan event, I should say, that is not baked into anybody's predictions. I don't think everybody that I've talked to about 2025 predictions is basically saying, hey, I'm not counting on that happening. Right. But if that does happen, whether it's 2025, 2026, like that changes the game completely. It's just wild. Like when is the rest of the world going to wake up to what's going on here? We're sitting here talking about an asset that could increase an average of 150, 200% per year for the next 5 years. And like that makes, you don't talk about that in other asset classes. Like that is bananas to most asset classes. And you're not some, Bitwise is a very respected firm in the TradFi space, very well known. Like these are not predictions that are coming from, out of the way they were maybe, 10 years ago, back when Bitcoin was early and we didn't have the people in the space that are doing the research that you guys are doing and putting the effort into building this report. I mean, I just think, I can't wait till Christmas dinner this year to sit down with my family and for every single person at the table to look at me and be like, is it too late? Did I miss it? And I'm just going to show them this shot and say, here you go. Just start allocating at least a few percent. Everybody, please.
At least a few percent. I know. I love that. BlackRock, by the way, the largest asset manager in the world, just came out and said everyone should have 1% to 2% Bitcoin in their portfolio. Interactive Brokers, another very respectable, traditional finance brand, came out and said everyone should have crypto in their portfolio. So you're right. It's not just this crazy corner of the crypto world that's now coming around to everybody having some kind of allocation to Bitcoin or crypto more broadly in their portfolio. And so we're really excited about, what that will do to drive the assets higher. And by the way, this 10x that we're talking about over a 5-year period has happened before. From 2019 to 2025, the market did a 10x. From 2015 to 2020, the market did far more than a 10x. So this actually isn't that crazy of a prediction when you zoom out and see what's happened in the past. And, I know that we believe that investors are still early to Bitcoin until it hits 500 to 1 million per coin. And so we're, kind of screaming from the rooftops that it's not too late, and kind of all great assets look expensive at the time, but cheap in hindsight. And we think Bitcoin is no different.
That's a great point. Ryan, been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you today. Really appreciate your thoughts, and shout out to the entire Bitwise team, the 100 or so people you guys have there that are just absolutely crushing it and coming up with this report. Everybody listening in, I want to know, what do you think? 1 million Bitcoin by 2029? You think that's bullish, bearish? You think we're going to get to 1 million earlier or later? Let us know what year in the comments you think Bitcoin will hit 1 million. Thanks so much for listening in, everybody. Have a wicked awesome day.
Thank you.
As always, if you liked today's episode, please hit subscribe and make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, we're going to also leave a link for Milk Road Pro. You get access to our portfolio where you can see exactly what we are buying. This is your #1 resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this show is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Investing in crypto or any asset is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks so much for listening in, my friends. Have a wicked awesome day.